Your girlfriend will hate Bird Dog's khaki shorts. She'll say the llamas on their website look like a preschooler's birthday party invite, not an apparel company. She'll say the sexual innuendos in their newsletters are meant for 7th graders, not grown men like you. She might even tell you that naming one of the products, quote, Christopher Columbus is borderline offensive. But as soon as you feel their soft inner liner and see how great their stretch material makes you look, you'll never want to take them off. Go to birddogs.com/radio to find out for yourself. They'll even throw in a free tumbler. That's birddogs.com/radio.
Life comes with a lot of decisions, and it can be hard to know the right path sometimes. A therapist can help you map out what you really want, so you trust yourself to make great choices and feel excited about the future. BetterHelp offers convenient professional online therapy on your schedule, however you want it, by phone, chat, or video call. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/positive today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/positive.
All right, welcome back in. Hour number 2. Our thanks to Zach Bush, head coach of the Aftershocks, for joining us. You can go back and listen to that interview for free on the Odyssey app. Chad will get that uploaded after we get off the show today. If you missed anything, we will see them at practice today. Hoping to see KU at practice today as well. They're both practicing early in the morning, so we're trying to move some things around to get over there through 12 News. But it is a great time of the year, man. We got training camps starting later this week, but one big storyline that has developed now and will hang over training camp, you can put money on it, is this running back conundrum existing right now in the NFL, which is essentially, what do we do with the position here? Something is going wacky because running backs are being devalued in the marketplace at a far greater reality than what they're actually worth. You can bring up Isaiah Pacheco. That's fine. Okay? He's not the best example because Isaiah Pacheco's never going to get paid in this league. Right? Like, most likely, the Chiefs will use him at a 7th-round value until, he gets injured, or until he comes into free agency and they'll let him walk. That's what they do. They might tag him once because it's cheap to tag running backs, which is part of the problem here. But if you want to talk about running back value, you're going to have to try pretty hard with me because I'm looking right now. You go down and try to make the case to me that Hunter Renfrow and Odell Beckham Jr. and Cortland Sutton and Corey Davis and Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Tim Patrick are all better players than Saquon Barkley? Because they're all going to earn more if he just takes a tag. Austin Eckler makes $6 million a year. $6 million a year is what Austin Eckler makes. You go down the list to find wide receivers that make $6 million a year, I'll give you Cedric Wilson Jr., Darius Slayton, right, and then a bunch of rookies, and they'll all get paid. That's what you have to. You go down to that spot. It's Tommy. That's not accurate, and that's where I don't know what the solution is. How do you find it? Because it's not equitable, right? It's not, and I'm not saying like equitable in that you have to force, because I am an open and free market guy, but there is a dynamic here that has to be corrected, and I think it has to do with timing as much as anything. Like, if you could time it or maybe figure out a way to have a rookie contract be worth more. And I don't I look at Bijan Robinson's contract. Bijan Robinson's got $22 million total guaranteed.
He's going to make a lot of money.
A nice deal as a rookie.
Yep.
But then you go down the list, and Jahmyr Gibbs has, 0 totally guaranteed. So I don't know what to make of all this, except there has to be like an entry-level spot or a quicker process to get to the market for a running back. Maybe there's just a simple equation for NFL teams to come in and say, if you have X number of touches, like let's say you've got you average 150 touches a year, because you don't want teams throttling it on purpose, right? And I think they would be. I don't think they'd be that bold. But let's say it's 150 touches a year for your first 3 years or whatever. You meet this threshold, you can get to free agency a year sooner. Or I don't know what it is. I don't know what the answer is. But this isn't right. Like, this is crazy.
I mean, look at Major League Baseball in the draft. I mean, they've got slot positions, right, where you've got, salaries based on your position and where you're taken in the draft and all of that. I mean, I'm not sure that that's the right solution, because nobody's going to take a running back early, because you'd have to be guaranteed to pay him, more than what you might want to. So I don't know if that's the solution, but Major League Baseball has, steps in place when players are being drafted to help with that sort of thing. To me, this is a simple supply and demand proposition. There is a big supply of running backs, and the demand is just really not there. I mean, think about the running back rooms for the teams that have most recently won the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs had a running back room of Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon. You can't even really count Clyde Edwards-Helaire because he was injured. And Ronald Jones, that was their running back room, and they won a championship. The Los Angeles Rams had a running back room. Cam Akers was in their running back room, and Darrell Henderson was in their running back room. Like, that won a championship for the Rams. So the two most recent examples, I think, show that you don't have to have a high-profile, expensive running back on your roster to win a championship. And so teams know that, right? And so they look at how much, a player like Saquon Barkley or Dalvin Cook or Josh Jacobs, Ezekiel Elliott, how much those players are going to want to make. And then you look at your balance sheet and you say, do we have to have them and pay them that amount of money if we want to win a championship? And at least right now, the last couple of years, the answer has been no.
There was a stretch for a long time in the NFL where the same thing was said and could be case easily made for wide receivers.
Sure.
I think it was the stretch. I don't know, maybe, it's been, I don't know the exact dates, but I've done this exercise before. We had the same conversation, right? Do you need a great receiver? Is it worth paying great receivers? And the answer at that point was no. Other than like Marvin Harrison, there just weren't great receivers on Super Bowl winning teams for a long time. And that's obviously changed now. And so maybe and I do think the league ebbs and flows. And I do think the answer to the spread that we've seen is what defenses have done. And that's where running backs are going to become a bigger part of, right, how you beat those two deep safeties.
I mean, when was the last time, by the way, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but when was the last time that a high-profile, expensive running back won a team a Super Bowl, or at least like
early?
How many years ago was that? I mean, we're talking 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a while. I mean, like the Buccaneers had Leonard Fournette when they won.
That's pretty high profile.
I mean, it's okay. It's not like I wouldn't put him in the top echelon.
He was a first-round pick. No, I wouldn't either. He was good that year, though. He was really good. You've had Gurley in there, which was a big one. The Rams, when they beat the Bengals, were they drafted Cam Akers high.
They had Sony Michel and Darrell Henderson. Those were their running backs.
Right. Sony Michel was a first-round pick, yes. Darrell Henderson was a top 3-round pick. They invested in the position. Look, the Rams have a Super Bowl and lost a Super Bowl with high-profile.
But it's a platoon.
So,
it's a platoon, right? And that's the way that it worked with the Chiefs also. Like, you're rotating through running backs, and you're spreading that wealth a little bit. It's kind of a timeshare.
Those teams emphasized the run game. They had injuries, right?
But out of any of these running backs that we have mentioned, Barkley, Jacobs, Cook, Elliott, Sanders from Philadelphia, Eckler
was another high pick though. Sanders, they spent a lot of draft capital on Miles Sanders.
Any of them that are garnering a significant amount of money or want to make a significant amount of money on the market, have they won a Super Bowl for their team? They haven't. And do teams look at them and say, yeah, we could spend a lot of money on them? Or do we have to do that? Or can we just go draft somebody or cheaply sign a free agent and still go win a Super Bowl? It's a value proposition, right?
I sort of get that. But let me go through the list of the highest paid wide receivers. Tyreek Hill, has he helped the Dolphins win a Super Bowl?
He sure helped the Chiefs win a Super Bowl.
He did, but this is before he got paid, right? So since he's been paid, were the Dolphins close to a Super Bowl last year?
It's been 1 year.
Okay, Devontae Adams. Cooper Kupp is yes. Cooper Kupp is a yes, and that's why he got paid, right? A.J. Brown, they didn't quite get it done. Steph Diggs, they haven't gotten over the hump. DK Metcalf, not close. Debo Samuel hasn't gotten over the hump. Terry McLaurin, hard no. DJ Moore, hard no. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, no. Cooper, no. Godwin, yes. We're down the list now, though. And these guys are making $20 million a year. I'm giving you guys that are making double what a running back's making. So that's my problem with this conversation. When people want to say, oh, well, these running backs, they're just not worth the deal. Okay, well, what's the value there? Because Aaron Jones makes $11.5 million a year, touches the ball an absurd amount of time, right? For those Packers teams, Devontae Adams makes almost 3 times that as a wide receiver and has been no closer to a Super Bowl. So where's the value there? Like, who is more valuable on great Packers teams, Devontae Adams or Aaron Jones? I would say it's pretty close to even if you watched them play football. And that's where the problem comes. It's more replaceable. You give that example with the Packers. I mean, I think that knowing that the Packers organization and Matt LaFleur has done this ever since he's been the head coach there, Aaron Jones hasn't been the workhorse for the Packers. A.J. Dillon gets in there a lot. And so it's one of those things where, man, like if you really wanted to make a running back the bell cow of your organization and say, take us to the Super Bowl, I don't know who that running back is. I truly don't. Like, Jonathan Taylor has been the bell cow for the Colts. He hasn't taken him anywhere close to the Super Bowl. Derrick Henry has been the bell cow for the Titans. Hasn't taken them anywhere close to a Super Bowl. Real quick. Aaron Jones has the 10th most touches over the last 3 years at the position. So he is a workhorse. He absolutely is a workhorse.
Has he gotten him close to a Super Bowl?
He got him just as close as Devontae Adams did.
And Devontae Adams went and got paid, right? He went and got paid with another organization.
But Aaron Jones, that won't happen for Aaron Jones because the prime of his career happened far earlier than Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams got paid without even knowing he's being married to Aaron Rodgers. Like, that's a far riskier proposition for a team to me. And I'm not, look, teams can spend their money the smartest way. I get it. Like, the difference, I think the biggest reason for this is the difference in Devontae Adams versus, replacement value is far greater. That's what's at issue, right? It's far greater between Devontae Adams and what you might replace him with versus Aaron Jones and what you might replace him with when Aaron Jones is 26 years old. So that's the problem. Here's another great example of why this is wacky. Who's the most important player in the Chargers offense outside of Justin Herbert and has been for 3 years now?
Probably Keenan Allen.
I would say Austin Eckler. Eckler touched the ball far more. So Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are both making $20 million a year. Both of them are making $20 million.
You need on-the-go convenience. Novex Smart Hub delivers. Pay your electric bills, view your energy use, report an outage, and receive alerts regarding your account. With Smart Hub, use your credit card with no processing fees. Level out your monthly electric bills by enrolling in budget billing through Smart Hub. Easily access it through Novex mobile app or at Novec.com. You're on the go. Novex Smart Hub goes with you.
Austin Eckler's making $6. I don't know that replacement value is equitable. Austin Eckler is one of the more valuable running backs in football. based on production when he's on the field and when he's not on the field. And it's, it's wild. And he, by the way, is just ahead of Aaron Jones in touches over the last 3 years. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams can't stay healthy to save their lives. Neither one of those guys can finish a full season. They're far more injury prone than Eckler. They're making $20 million a year each. And Eckler's making $6 million.
But aren't we just looking here at what NFL teams value? And I know that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but think of the amount of money that teams invest in the quarterback position, right?
Yep.
And so if you are pumping a ton of money into the quarterback position, then by extension, you then should probably pump some money into the wide receiver position to catch the football from your most prized position.
Defense. Yeah,
100%.
And the pass rushers and corners on defense.
If a team like the Chargers has invested, and they're going to invest in Justin Herbert long-term, if he is the franchise quarterback, and by all accounts he is, for Los Angeles, then you better surround him with receivers that can complement him. And if that's Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and you're paying them $20 million, I get that. I get that investment because you're investing in what's going to make your biggest investment better. Where the running back position, I think there's still value to make your quarterback position better, but it's less defined, right? Like nobody looks at, or it's very rare, you look at a running back and the amount of work and success that they have and you say, man, that's really making the quarterback better. I think it does, but I think it's harder to make that connection in the perceived value than the direct value correlation between a quarterback and a wide receiver.
I don't have any issue with those guys getting paid. I agree with what you're saying, but it's inaccurate to say Austin Eckler hasn't been critical to them.
I'm not saying that. I'm not
Mike
saying
Williams
that he
over that
hasn't been
same
critical.
So Mike Williams as a receiver over that same 3-year stretch we're talking about here has fewer receptions than Austin Eckler. And let me just look at the total, the yards here receiving. He is ballparking 900, 750, 1650, about 2,700 yards, fewer receptions. Eckler is about 1,700 yards with more receptions by a pretty healthy amount on the receptions. So guys like Eckler should be Eckler and Barkley, and it's the guys that have the touches, right? It's the touch load where it's like if you put WR by their name and line them up in the slot and they touch the ball the exact same amount of times, they're getting paid. Hunter Renfrow, Tommy. Hunter Renfrow, who is a running back that lines up in the slot, basically, is making almost $16 million a year. That's crazy. That's crazy. It's not crazy because he's being paid that. I don't have a problem with him being paid that. What's crazy is trying to figure out, right, the value. How do you get running backs to represent their value in the market? The problem for them, again, is that you don't get to that point until they become replaceable because they are older and production dips and they become more injury prone because they've had such a hard. If running backs didn't have the heavy workloads at the beginnings of their career, they would be far less likely to break down late in their career. They're being punished. This is Derrick Henry and Austin Eckler's point, and I agree with it. They're being punished for shouldering the load for their teams early in their careers. That's the problem the NFL has here. It's not like, these guys, they touch the ball and take more contact than anybody. Outside of the lines, I suppose you could make a case for, but linemen don't have to run. So you've got these guys that are shouldering the loads for their teams, and pretty good teams in some cases, right? And they won't ever get the opportunity to pay off on that because they did that, right? It's like because they had high. What you're going to see is running backs come in and say, listen, guys, I don't want to touch the ball more than this many times. That's a weird dynamic that football, we can't have that happen because that's going to get weird and complicated. Like, you can't let this market, which these guys are going to unify at some point and say, you know what, forget it. That's what the NFL does. Like, you can't let that happen. And so when I say I'm like open market, let everything take care of itself, but there are times for regulation when you have to like protect everything. That's a moment where the NFL's got to protect everything, because this thing could spiral out of control on the NFL if they don't figure something out. And again, I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's artificially inflating the franchise tag. That is the simplest to me way to do this, is to artificially inflate the franchise tag to match wide receivers. That's probably what I would do. I would just marry the two franchise tags between wide receivers and running backs, because I think if you did that, let's just use that example. So let's say you've done that, and I don't know what the franchise tag number on a receiver is. If I'm looking at the top contracts right now, it's between, it looks like 20 and 30 million, so it would probably land somewhere in the $25 million range to tag a receiver, right? And let's say, it's $25 million. And Keenan Allen he's 31 now, but let's say it's when he was 26. How old is, I think Eckler's 27 now, or 28. Yeah. Let's say both of those guys are 26. I do think a team would be as inclined to tag those players, even if that's it, right? Because they're not going to get the long-term contract. That'll never happen. But even if it's just that tag, if that tag that every team seems so willing to give a running back, because it's always running backs, right? It's always training camp, and it's always the franchise tag, because the franchise tag sucks for running backs. So what if it's $25 million instead of 10? What if it just matches what a wide receiver is?
So
you
it's
think
just
the
under,
Giants?
It's just under 20 for wide receivers is kind of the average, like 19.7
okay, so
million
doubling their
for
money.
wide receivers. Yeah.
So let's say Saquon Barkley's in the same situation. They're like, we want to tag you. But that's essentially double the money, right? And it's a significant amount of money based on rookie deals and all this stuff. I think that running backs would probably be like, okay, that's the nature of the business, right? We're playing to get to that tag. We're playing for that tag payday, and then we're going to have to take a pay cut after that. That's just the reality of the situation. Or maybe they tag us again, which, again, is really good for us. I think that that's at least an idea of a short-term solution to a long-term problem. And look, this problem could correct itself some as the league, I think, starts to value the running backs a little bit more, which I think we saw in the draft this year, that the league is, whether they'll say it out loud, valuing the running backs more. Between Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, like they're valuing running backs more than we think they are. Breece Hall last year, but they're not paying them that way yet. They will,
yeah.
But maybe a married tag is the short-term answer.
This is the same thing. It's the exact same reason why the Chiefs were, I think, willing to write a check on a one-year deal for DeAndre Hopkins of what, probably between $12 and $15 million. Just willing, like if they had gotten a Chris Jones deal done, I have no doubt in my mind that they would have offered a one-year, $14 million deal, let's say, to DeAndre Hopkins. But not willing, and that we haven't heard them in the same conversations with, Ezekiel Elliott or who else is on the market running back? Well, Austin Eckler was on the market running back wise. Like there's the same Dalvin Cook, the same reason, because they know that they can get running backs for a whole lot cheaper and still be effective to win a championship. Remember, they won a championship with Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon, Ronald Jones. So it's the same reason why. It's just basically the value proposition on what teams are willing to prioritize and open up their checkbooks for. And, you could hear, I could have heard all day long that the Chiefs are, happy with their running back room as it is. Okay, that might be true, but they also, not only are they happy with the production, they're happy with the amount of money they're spending with that position group and the stats and the success they're getting out of that group, right? So I think, and you can make this argument for any position group, the total amount of salary you're paying that position group, and then you look at their stats, was that a good investment or a bad investment? And I think we've seen over the last few years, the teams that are willing to open up the checkbook and spend on running backs for long-term guaranteed contracts, I think oftentimes it doesn't really work out.
No, there's too much injury risk. That'll never happen, right? You're never going to get to a situation where teams are willing to give long-term deals to running backs. It's just like very, very, very,
Adrian
very,
Peterson did it and broke the free agent market when that happened. That's
Yeah.
not happening again. You know,
No,
he was
I mean,
the
it
highest
might-
paid
in
running
rare
back in NFL
circumstances-
history. It's not happening again.
In rare circumstances, you could get a Christian McCaffrey contract or a Derrick Henry contract or a Kamara contract, Chubb contract. But again, even those contracts aren't very big. Like they're not very big at all. So that part of it you're never going to solve because they're too injury prone, right? Like that, it's just not good business. You'll never solve that. I do think though this short-term issue is somewhat solvable. We have to figure out a way to, in the short term, take care of some of the most exciting and impactful players. And I'm going to tell you this right now, and it is important and it does matter, and you can laugh all you want. But the NFL also has to protect, Tommy, the other reasons so many people love football. Fantasy football, betting, right? Running backs are very important in those worlds. You don't necessarily, like, there are things the league's got to take a look at here to make sure that this thing runs and is as profitable as it can be. Taking care of running backs is important. They got to figure out a way to do it. I think I've talked myself into marrying the tag between receivers and running backs, or at least maybe providing the option for that, because not every running back would have that value. But man, Saquon Barkley does. You could easily make a case that Josh Jacobs does after the year he did last year on a one-year deal. Like, what does that hurt
But you
those
know what?
teams?
The other example of a running back being franchise tagged is Tony Pollard, and I think he's probably more worth that $10 million, where that kind of low
I do too, because he
franchise
hasn't
tag.
done
So
it.
like, you know, he's not. They're not going to franchise tag Tony Pollard if those
No,
amounts
but
are married with wide
you'd
receivers.
have to leave both options available. Like, you'd have to leave the player eligible for that. So if that's what he wants to negotiate to, then he can. But also,
And maybe it's stat based. Maybe it's what they did the year before.
well, even if it's not stat based, like, you can either accept one of two tags. Like, you have the option to request a tag of a wide receiver or a running back. And so in Tony Pollard's case, who hasn't proved it yet, Tony Pollard has more to prove and play for because he's younger, right? Tony Pollard, okay, $10 million. Yeah, I'm good with that if I'm Pollard. But man, if I'm Saquon Barkley and I'm Eckler, or I'm one of these guys that touches the ball as often as they do, I want that 20. I've proven it, and I'm going to touch the ball. And for the teams, quite frankly, when everything's determined for a year, yeah, okay. I'd be on board with that if I was the team on a one-year deal.
Maybe it's, Major League Baseball. I mentioned them before. They do arbitration. Maybe it's an arbitration type thing with the teams and the players. And I know it can get nasty, but you've got a neutral middleman to basically decide the value.
Yeah, but
of
then
your
you might
franchise
open
tag.
that up. You'd open that up for every position, and that would not be good for the league. I don't think they want that at all. The players might want it. I don't know. They didn't bargain this well, obviously. 869-1240 is the number to call. Plenty to get to here on the show. Your thoughts on that, by the way. The IHOP hotline is open, 869-1240. Any other ideas, or do you just let it play out because it's the open market? I don't know. I'm confused by it. I'm concerned by it. And I don't want to see these great football players not play football. That's my number one priority in the discussion. Congratulations to Steve for winning the HTO iced teas on us. Let's give away some WinSurge vouchers into the break here. Jad will get us a winner for a 4-pack of WinSurge vouchers. You pick the game, cash them in. You can go. They turn into tickets at that point. 869-1240. We'll get a winner. We'll come right back. Steve is having a great day. Actually, two different Steves. We had a Steve win our HTO free iced tea vouchers, and we had a different Steve win our WinSurge voucher. Maybe a Steve.
That's a lot of Steves.
Did we have a Powerball winner last night? Maybe a Steve won the Powerball. I did not win the Powerball. I'll tell you, if I win the Powerball on a weeknight, I will come to the show the next day. I'll make you that guess.
Okay.
$1 billion is up for grabs in the next one, which means it doesn't seem like anybody won.
If I won the
all right.
Powerball, I would not be on the show the next day.
Well.
Or I might be. I might be on the show, but you might not be on the show. I might make that decision. If I've got that kind of money, you never know.
Yeah, but you'd probably be quitting the next day. I feel like management would side with me there. Like, At that time, you're instantly a short timer.
I don't know. I've got $1 billion. Are they going to back me or back you?
Well, if you're gone the next day, good luck, everybody, with the $1 billion Powerball coming to you soon. Real quick before we get back into this running back discussion, you a Lionel Messi guy, Tommy? He's here, and people are going nuts for it.
I saw he was grocery shopping the other day. There were photos of him at a grocery store in Florida pushing a cart around, and I looked at it and I thought, I don't know why I care about this, but yeah, people are freaking out. They're seeing him all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad he's here. I'm glad he can come here and maybe get a little anonymity. I saw some tickets for his first game were going for a reported like $110,000. Okay, good luck there on that. That's pretty crazy. That's not just pretty crazy. That's really crazy. But okay, I'm happy he's here.
Good for him.
I'm happy he's here. I've never watched him play soccer.
I think I'm pretty sure the picture that I saw of him, he was shopping at a Publix grocery store. I don't know if you've ever been to a Publix before. But
I think
it's
on
top-notch.
vacation, maybe
it's
I have.
It's a top-notch grocery. Like they've got like the sub sandwiches there apparently are incredible. I've had one before. It was great. So I don't blame him. I mean, that's a good place to go get your groceries.
It seems like a fine place. Yeah, good for him. I mean, it'll be a different experience. I feel like I've heard he can't even get home. Like when he's in Argentina, like he can't be out. Like he can't be. All right. Well, back to football, American style. So if you look at franchise tag values for 2023, outside of kickers and punters, running backs are the lowest. Again, doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Safeties make almost 50% more than a running back on the tag. You will not make the case to me that a safety is 50% more valuable in the NFL than a running back. Just not. I will never accept that because it's not true. So, and it just doesn't, like, this is where this is a problem, right? All across the board, somehow this number has been pushed down when every other number is pushed up. There has to be some reason, I think, that we're getting into this issue that is correctable. And I don't know what it is. I don't think anybody's doing it intentionally either. Like, I don't think there's like some sinister motive in this. I think it's just the way that things have played out, and it's creating a big issue for the league. And when that happens, those are the times where the league probably needs to step in and say, okay, hang on a minute. Like this, something's not right here because our eyes tell us that this is not okay. Like this isn't the way this needs to go, should go, whatever. And again, like we can bring up the examples of Isaiah Pacheco. Isaiah Pacheco, if he is very lucky, would get paid nothing, basically, and get to the point where he can make a $10 million franchise tag. Isaiah Pacheco is a great reason of why this is wrong, right? Isaiah Pacheco, if he continues the trajectory he did in his rookie year and carries the workload that will require him to do that, he deserves to be able to be paid on a franchise tag. That's why the franchise tag is there. And so it's hurting in both directions, right? This tag, it doesn't allow, anybody really at the position to be of any value when they so clearly have a value. Tommy, you think Isaiah Pacheco was simply replaceable last year? Like, what if that's Ronald Jones and not Isaiah Pacheco late in a game? There's a big difference there.
For sure. And that's also an example of, you don't have to draft a running back in the early rounds and pay them like a Bijan Robinson, who was drafted early and got a really solid deal. That's kind of an outlier in running back contracts. You can go and you can draft a running back in the later rounds or sign an undrafted free agent. And, it's kind of a crapshoot, but depending on who you get, they can make a pretty solid impact. I want to be very clear about something. I'm not in favor of running back salaries being held down. I'm not at all. I'm just trying to be realistic in all of this. And the realistic take is that NFL teams are not going to willingly pay more money than they have to. It's just not going to happen,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So the only way that if these running backs want to unite together to try to get paid more money, the only way that this is going to work is it has to start with the Players Association. That's the only way. It's got to be a part of collective bargaining. There's got to be negotiations, and there's got to be a willingness. And I don't know the next time that the collective bargaining agreement is up. I don't know the next time that negotiations begin, but that might be something that the Players Association would want to take a look at. But, just out of the goodness of their hearts, NFL teams aren't going to just magically start paying running backs more money because, they're being, feel like they're being held down. Like, that's not realistic. What's realistic is that the last two Super Bowl champions have had running backs on their roster that haven't been paid a ton of money, and that the premier running backs in this league aren't getting the amount of money that they feel like they deserve, but they're not leading their teams to Super Bowls either. So that's just the realistic take, and it's going to have to take something, I think, in a negotiation for this to be remedied one way or another.
But the Rams did have high-profile running backs on their roster. They had 3 of them. Akers, Henderson, and Michelle were all relatively high picks.
Those are not high-profile running backs. They might have been picked high, but as far as their production in the league, you can't tell me that Darrell Henderson ranks up there with Austin Eckler and Dalvin Cook and all those other guys that are on the market right now. Like, that's not realistic.
You're saying that teams that win Super Bowls aren't investing in the position, and that's not true.
What are they paying those guys?
Draft capital is an investment for everybody. Nobody on their first few years outside of quarterback gets paid a ton. Like,
I'm not talking about players being drafted high or drafted low. I'm talking about established NFL running backs that feel like they deserve
big free agent contracts.
That feel like they deserve big free agent contracts. Those running backs, they've not led their teams to Super Bowls, have they? You said Todd Gurley? That was probably the last time that happened. I wouldn't even put Leonard Fournette in that category.
Well, Leonard Fournette was really good the year they won the Super Bowl. Like, he actually had one of his better years. And Joe Mixon made it to the Super Bowl for the Bengals. I think you could make the case there for him. And, Miles Sanders, for whatever you want to say about Miles Sanders. Like, these running backs that, fit a profile. But what we're saying is crazy. Like, the best running backs in the league, because their teams haven't made Super Bowls, we're not holding quarterbacks to that same standard, right? Like, quarterbacks that get paid. Kyler Murray.
I'm just telling you the way it is. I'm not telling you.
Well, I know the way it is, but what I'm saying, I understand the way it is, but the way it is a problem. Kyler Murray just made an absurd amount of money. He's never going to sniff a Super Bowl. So why is that different than evaluating the running backs? Like, if Super Bowl is the standard to get paid, we pay quarterbacks all the time.
Tell me why this is a problem at its core. Like, and I think I agree with you that to an extent, like, it could spiral out of control and, but I want to know, like, is this a legitimate problem for the league, or is this a desire for running backs to just make more money? Like, it's a problem for the league. What is the end result for this if it's not remedied?
The problem is some of your best players, some of the most exciting players, high-profile players, most popular players are going to revolt. When Marquez Valdez-Scantling, so you lose, like, you want the best players to play your sport.
What's the alternative? Retire? They're not going to do that. Like, that's really, it's accept the money that's on the table or retire. And maybe there would be a couple of them that would, but come on, I think that is ludicrous to think that, running backs revolting, like, eventually, I think that this is something that's got to be handled in negotiations, but to suggest that an entire position group is just going to walk away, I think is crazy. And you know what? If they do, NFL teams will adapt and adjust.
Of course they would adapt and adjust, but it doesn't mean you don't try and solve the problem before it happens, right? You don't want the problem to get to that point. Again, you can't have, like, and it happens time and time and time and time and time again. You can't keep like Tim Patrick cannot be, consistently paid more than Saquon Barkley. Like, that's not good for the game of football because you want Saquon Barkley playing football. He's as explosive and dynamic a player as there is in the league. So, and it's not right. Like, something's not correct. Like, that's not correct, right? That's not the correct valuation. But, and I don't know that there's a sinister reason. I don't think that there is, quite frankly. I think that the problem is the tag number is so low for running backs that running backs are like, man, that sucks. Like, that tag number is not, it's not appropriately reflective of what we're doing in the game, and they're correct in that. So
is Saquon
like,
Barkley going to play this year? Because what's his option? Hold out and not play?
Yeah, just like Le'Veon Bell.
Is he going to do that?
I don't know.
Le'Veon Bell did it, but it's rare that happens.
Saquon Barkley, by the way, like has a contract too. Like he's even a little bit different in this situation. Where is he on this list? So he has. Let me look at his. Yeah, he signed a 4-year deal with the Giants, so he actually has been paid. That's why Saquon Barkley kind of caught me off guard in that. Josh Jacobs is probably a better example of somebody who, carried the load last year, is young, right? He's 25 years old. He is now coming into that spot where, like, I get it. I get not wanting to give him a massive deal, but I would bet you, right, that if his tag number was that of a wide receiver for this year, I'll bet you the Raiders would pay him. I'll bet you they would for a year because that's his importance to the team. And that helps both ways, right? That goes both ways. The tag number for running backs is just too low. And your problem is Isaiah Pacheco is never going to get paid in this league, ever. Like, he might be lucky to get a franchise tag, if we're being completely honest. Do you think if Isaiah Pacheco came up, the Chiefs would tag him at $10 million?
Probably not. And you know what? I bet you because they're so good at drafting, they could go out and draft another running back that would be effective for them.
Yeah, they're so good at drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's not easy. You got to figure out a way to discussion. You got to figure out a way to take care of guys like Isaiah.
No, you don't. I think in negotiations, sure. If you're going to put it in the collective bargaining, sure. I'm okay with that. Let the representatives handle it. Figure something out. But I'm also not going to sit here and virtue signal that I feel like all these guys need to make all this money. Like, the market is the market and the value is the value. And these players are finding what's going on. They're going to get paid accordingly right now as it stands. Is it fair? No, but life's not fair. It is what it is. I'm not virtue signaling.
I would do the same thing if I was an NFL team. I'm saying the NFL is going to have to take a look at this. Do you know when the next CBA is, Tommy?
I don't know. When is it?
2030. 2030. That's too far out to not take a look at this if you're the league. Take a look at it. See if you can't. Like, look, training camp starts this week, and this is all anybody's going to talk about today. Not just us. Everywhere. And it's going to linger over camp. That's not good for the league. The league doesn't want that. They don't want this lingering over training camp. And that's what's going to happen. That'll be the discussion for a while. And now, if Barkley holds out, let's say Josh Jacobs holds out, and like all these guys begin to hold out, then it's going to stay in the topic. You don't want that if you're protect the shield, right? What can they do? I'm not virtue signaling. I'm just trying to think of like, what is a possible answer to this weird problem that's existed because the market says it should? And it, I get it. But I don't know that it's something you just ignore if you're the league. 869-1240 is the number to call here on Sports Daily. Brent Venables with a little shot fired on Deion Sanders. We'll tell you what that's all about when we return on Sports Daily. All right, Tommy, I don't know if you saw this. Brent Venables kind of firing a shot at the way Deion Sanders put this roster together. You've seen the video, handing out all the pink slips, essentially, all the transfers in and out of the program. Venables was in a similar situation when taking over Oklahoma, and, he just basically said that's not the way that I feel like this should be done. Take care of the guys that are holdovers. Deion handled it with a much more professional approach, right? You guys aren't good enough to be here. See you later. Like it was almost like Deion's handling it like an NFL general manager, and Brent Venables is more of a old school college. These are student athletes. We're going to respect them. Interesting take, I think, from Brent Venables to put out there publicly.
Yeah, and I get his thought process on this and why he was vocal about it. Oklahoma didn't have a good year last year, right? And so I think that some of this is covering himself, saying, hey, like, and I don't know if he's making excuses necessarily, but just saying, hey, I handled it a little bit, more compassionately than Deion did. And I think that you can draw that conclusion in his mind, connect the dots that he's saying, I was compassionate about it. We didn't have a good season. And maybe that's why. So I understand Venables in his position, and maybe had he been more like Deion, I'm not suggesting you should have been, they would have had a better season.
Yeah, it's a strong take. I don't totally disagree. Might be something to get into tomorrow. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll tell you what's on the network, what's on tap today on Sports Daily.
Come and enjoy a free birthday boil at Hook and Reel.